So, Greek myth time again. Last time it was dude and the embodiment of death. This time it's a lady and an embodiment of sex and love and sex and mostly sex. The Etruscans knew her as Turin, the Romans knew her as Venus, the Greeks knew her as Aphrodite.
Aphrodite, goddess of love.
Unlike figures like Hercules who became popular as characters,
mind your own business, Venus.
Aphrodite is beloved in pop culture more as a symbol or an idea more than a character that does things. Two of the most famous pieces of art in European history are of the goddess Venus. Venus de Milo, thought to be the work of Alexandros of Antioch, and Botticelli's The Birth of Venus, which gets homaged in everything from Lady Gaga videos to the Muppets to Andy Warhol. And let's not forget name drops in pop songs.
Is Venus in blue jeans?
I'm your Venus.
Oh, Venus.
Aphrodite, alright.
Aphrodite.
Make me your Aphrodite.
But she does pop up as a character from time to time, and that's what we're going to look at today. Said characters tend to draw on Botticelli's Venus a lot, at least in terms of their iconography, but unlike heroic Hercules or bellicose Ares or wise Athena, Aphrodite doesn't really have any intrinsic definitive character attributes. Most of her characterization tends to draw on what society thinks of a sexualized woman at the time that the media is made.
You can still share my bed.
Aphrodite is an interesting subject as far as modern iterations go, not because she is a love goddess, but because the Greeks had such different ideas on love and what it even was. The typical Greek love categories were agape, which was a charitable, philanthropic kind of love, like love for mankind. Philia, a concept developed by Aristotle, which is an affectionate, dispassionate, virtuous love between friends, usually between equals. Aphrodite's domain wasn't catch-all love, but erotic sexual love. Eros, love in the sense of passionate desire for an object, but a feminine version of it. Women in ancient Greece were basically considered subhuman, and let's just get that out of the way. So the lover is some guy, and the love-e of Eros is an object. Typically women or teenage boys. Greek attitudes on love and beauty were somewhat contradictory. What we consider infatuation was to the Greeks considered a form of madness, like a mental illness, and while some social classes and city-states had more favorable views on love, beauty, and femininity, there were big influences from philosophers as well. Aristotle thought that women would bring disorder, evil, and were utterly useless and caused more confusion than the enemy. Socrates wrote, "Women are the weaker sex. Being born a woman is a divine punishment, since a woman is halfway between a man and an animal." Aristotle wrote that the male is by nature superior and the female inferior, as one rules and the other is ruled. This inequality is permanent because the woman's deliberate faculty is without authority, like a child's. Aristotle considered Eros as the love of desire, or acquisitive love, and therefore egocentric and object-oriented. Lesser to, say, philia, or brotherly love. This is not a love between equals. There were schools of thought that disagreed with this, of course, like the Stoics, who wanted sexual equality and were much more, pro sex, and things were much better for women in Sparta than Athens. But the point is that the Greek viewpoint on love, femininity, and sexuality was extremely varied and overall way different from ours. Erotic love wasn't an awesome, fun, sexy thing like we see it today, but a scary, maddening thing, more of a disease than a rite of passage. Hence why Cupid's weapon of choice is an arrow, you're struck by it. Being madly in love was not a desirable thing, which is why it was considered intervention by capricious jerk gods like Aphrodite and Eros. And this isn't necessarily an idea relegated to antiquity. Even modern writers like C.S. Lewis held this viewpoint, that erotic love and infatuation is scary, madness thing, and we should have brotherly love of passionless discourse thought. Like a lot of Greek deities, Aphrodite was something of a holdover from a pre-Hellenistic era, which contributes to her being a bit of a contradictory figure for a society that was so on women. Aphrodite is more like Zeus than any of the other goddesses. She is married, but she sleeps around with whoever. She's highly sexualized, but still a goddess, and therefore must be respected. She's got the jealous spouse, the list goes on. Aphrodite was also a much bigger jerk than, say, Hades. She dealt in all sorts of godly interventions and eternal damnations and curses. But since she is a love goddess, and our modern idea on erotic love is so different from that of antiquity, her modern portrayals are a bit all over the place. Pop culture iterations of Aphrodite are imposing a modern idea of romantic love onto a character that was an embodiment of a different type of love, a different idea. And it's interesting to see how we portray a sexual goddess of love and beauty and desire, depending on what decade we're in, and how that decade feels about women, sex. So, let's start back with the 40s. It's not as bad as you think it's going to be, I promise.
To Venus, the goddess of love. May she stay on the job and take care of all of us.
1948's One Touch of Venus is loosely based on the Pygmalion myth, only with Venus in the place of Galatea. And I guess that isn't completely out of left field. In Ovid's Pygmalion, it is Aphrodite he prays to get his statue to come to life and be his Eros desire object. A wealthy department store mogul, Whitfield Savory II, buys a statue of Venus, and one of his clerks named Eddie gets drunk and kisses her. Yeah, Venus decides that this guy is hot stuff for reasons. Venus also touches on how she's dealt with her past mortal lovers in undesirable ways. Again, not really a thing in the actual mythology.
What about this fellow, the one you turned into an owl?
Hippolytus? So annoying that I finally had to turn him into a...
But boy, you want to talk about women? Mythical Venus smote for things like friend-zoning guys and getting raped in her temple. This is a very frivolous, light comedy. The plot is kind of only loosely held together. Eddie's disposable love interest is a paranoid nag, but she ends up with his buddy anyway, leaving the drunken statue kisser all alone. This stands in contrast to a 1988 remake called Goddess of Love, starring Vanna White.
Watch Wheel of Fortune tonight at 7.
Yep.
Aphrodite.
With apologies, dear Father Zeus, you know I prefer to be called Venus.
And this is why Vanna White's most famous role is for not speaking.
3,000 years I have lain entranced in slumber.
She is a statue for thousands of years, and the whole world is apparently goddess of loveless until this schmuck comes along with his corpse bride contrivance.
Boy, girl, wedding ring, finger.
Really? That's what we're going with? The drunk statue kiss made more sense. Well, her goal is thus.
She will return when she has won the heart of a man and proved that she can keep his love without killing him.
And there that is again. But where in One Touch of Venus it was more cutesy.
You love another.
Oh, no.
If so, I shall crush her.
Crush her?
Crush her.
Well, I guess this makes sense. It was the 80s. You know, it's the decade of fatal attraction. In One Touch of Venus, she seems to have an effect on his sanity in the way that a deity might. Here, it's more of an I Dream of Jeannie vibe. Up to and including our supernatural dream girl being a hyper-jealous nightmare, contrasted to the mortal love interest who is so reasonable. It ends with her learning the true meaning of love after all, after nearly killing both of them, which oddly results in her turning back into a statue, with the caveat that Zeus might backtrack on that later.
I shall consider giving her a second opportunity. Perhaps when the warm season ends.
This film also includes the late 80s, early 90s shopping montage, and it is set to a song called
Shopping spree. Shop, shop, shop. Shopping spree. Shop, shop, shop.
See, it's good that the song is telling us what was going on because I would have been really confused otherwise.
She's going crazy.
Look at these mortals. Losers. Isn't this awesome?
Aphrodite is a recurring character in both Hercules the Legendary Journeys and Xena Warrior Princess, and she wears pink a lot because 90s. This makes me yearn for the humble dignity of Vanna White.
Tubular.
Was that a boner? Boing. Hercules is the more goofy of the two shows, but probably one of the best that captures how petty and arbitrary and selfish and self-aggrandizing the Greek gods are. Aphrodite is all of these things.
Boring. You bore me. These bore me. Love bores me.
Despite that, she's one of the most likable. More than anything, the Aphrodite of Hercules' The Legendary Journeys reminds me of Cher Horowitz from Clueless.
If the government could just get to the kitchen, rearrange some things, we could certainly party with the Hadeans.
Here she uses a very early 90s idea of what a idealized physical beauty is.
Tubular!
Which is funny to see her aged into the late 90s. By late era Xena, her look was pretty dated, so they changed it up a bit. Hephaestus is here too. He's hot-ish in that he's not like the ugliest ever, but he has a rad face scar. As is Eros, who is called Cupid. Oh my god, girl harp.
What up? All I got left is my bones. Look, get to the point, Mom. I'm real busy.
See, young aspiring actors never lose hope. Aphrodite also has some of the best lines.
Aphrodite, get her off!
Ah, that's your job.
And while she has a nice brother-sister relationship in Hercules, with Xena it's more vain and bored and spiteful and jealous of Xena a lot, because women. In her appearances in Xena, at first she's much more into the whole catfight and jealousy thing. But on the plus side, she actually has a character arc over the course of the series, starting out as this, like, spiteful, mercurial goddess, and eventually growing to give a shit about mortals, specifically Gabrielle.
My little one.
When eventually Xena starts killing the Olympians, God of War style, Xena got there first. Aphrodite is not on her shit list and is more of an ally. And by this point, she's wearing her angry lingerie, so you know she means business. See, she never liked that Xena, but she likes Gabrielle, so she's allowed to live into the seasons where the show got really squirrely. Aphrodite is in the original Clash of the Titans. Barely. She's in the background for a lot of it, but only has a handful of lines.
But Zeus transformed himself into a glittering shower of gold and visited her.
Her big contribution to the narrative is Perseus's awesome new sword, and that's about it. Well, she does get name-dropped during Medusa's backstory.
But she was seduced by Poseidon. They made love in the temple of Aphrodite. She transformed her into an apparition so horrible.
Yeah, seduced, so that's what we're calling it. The Adventures of Baron Munchausen is... it's Terry Gilliam. It's very Terry Gilliam. Venus is played by Uma Thurman in her very first film role.
Hello.
The whole film is hung on the most dreamlike of logic, so I will try to explain it. So, after Robin Williams' giant floating head king of the moon threatens our heroes for about 20 minutes, they fall off the moon and land inside Vulcan's volcano. Hephaestus, here in the form of Vulcan, then takes them to tea. See what I mean when it sounds like someone's weird dream? And Venus shows up, once again on her Birth of Venus clamshell, and, I believe cucks is the word? Well, what happens next is a manosphere fever dream where she flirts and dances with the Baron, while nice guy Hephaestus goes unappreciated even after all those diamonds he made for her.
Another diamond.
Every woman above the age of 9 in this movie gets the hots for the Baron, and Vulcan is jealous. And that is one of his traditional traits, by the by. He is like the male Hera. So bizarre as this movie is, it ends up actually being one of the more faithful to its original myth. And because you jerks chose Aphrodite, that obligates me to finally, yes, I looked at God of War. Thanks.
Kratos. It's been far too long.
God of War follows a demigod named Kratos, who is basically out to kill Zeus and the Olympians, some of them, because revenge and destiny and stuff. In God of War 3, there is a scene where he goes to Aphrodite and finds her engaged with her handmaidens. Come on, really?
The gods have truly blessed you, Kratos.
This is like a parody. I mean, it's totally respectable and not silly at all.
I have no time for games, Aphrodite.
Aphrodite tries to seduce Kratos, but he's too badass to be interested in women. And then she tells him to do a thing, and then I guess he's not too badass because the player now has the option to be interested, and it cuts to this.
Oh, Kratos. I grew jealous of our mistress. Such power! If it's this good watching, just imagine. Is he going to... by the gods!
Usually if a woman says that in response to a man engaging in a sex act, it's not a good sign. The magic of video doesn't capture this, but DualShock actually shakes with Kratos' thrusts. I'm actually kind of surprised there are more depictions like this.
You men and your toys.
On occasion, Aphrodite appears as a mentor figure. 2011's E-Cupid was a micro-budget gay romance about a long-term relationship on the rocks.
How would you feel about some words of wisdom from a gal who's seen a thing or two?
Venus is played by Morgan Fairchild by way of a strangely supernatural-ish app who is here to give our main character what he thinks he wants so he can learn a valuable lesson about love.
What have you learned?
Venus is all about monogamy in this one. The goddess aspect is subtexty. The Cupid software is created by Divinity, and Venus is only referred to as such in the credits. And we don't actually see her until the end when she appears as a helpful waitress. And she shows up to give us the moral of the story.
What you know in your head. It's what you feel in your heart.
The incredibly vague moral of the story. And of course there is the criminally underrated Disney version, which is the best one. No, I'm not biased. Is Aphrodite in the 1997 movie that precedes it? Well, technically. Here, and again here, and here, and that's about it. But she's one of the best things about the animated series, which is one of the best things Disney television ever did.
Aphrodite, Aphrodite, Aphrodite.
She usually shows up when someone beseeches the gods for something love-related. Oh, and she's voiced by Lisa Kudrow.
My best friend Icarus is in love with my other best friend?
Wait, are they both human? Just checking, go on.
In one episode, Hades wants a prophet, not to find out whether the taking over Olympus thing will work out like he does in the movie.
Aphrodite! Oh, flare up.
But to find out if Aphrodite will go out with him because he has a big crush on her.
I want to ask her out on a date, but as you could probably imagine, I don't handle rejection well.
Making him probably the only Disney villain who is actually interested in a romantic relationship. Well, you know, I mean, a consensual one.
How did old man Pygmalion land a vision like that?
There is a Galatea episode, and she gets involved there, where Hercules decides to emulate Professor Pygmalion, who is a character, in order to get a date for the big dance. Hercules wants a dream girl, but of course the only attribute he cares about and asks for are physical ones.
I really like tall girls.
And also that she's obsessed with him.
Oh, okay, so beautiful and crazy about you. Good, digging deep, huh?
Women are people too, Hercules. And that's why they don't like you.
I was stupid.
And selfish.
And shallow.
And sexist.
Okay.
She shows up again in the Medusa episode in an ironic role reversal. Here she's actually helping her, if only in that typical Disney love yourself the way you are sort of way.
Well, real friends will like you for who you are, not what you look like.
And offers her glasses that prevent her from turning people into stone when they look at her, which Medusa eventually comes around to, but not before working for Hades for a little while first.
Orientation?
I run a professional organization.
This episode also has one of the best digs at the Disney company in all of Disneydom.
And we're not employees, we're cast members.
Modernizing Greek myth is always a popular one. She's not in the Percy Jackson series much. There she is. And her daughters are, in a deleted scene. Oof. I'd count that as a good thing that this was cut, but there's not much about these movies that are really all that salvageable regardless. And finally...
Everyone has a soulmate somewhere in the world.
Remember this? Yeah, me neither. Valentine was a CW show that aired in 2008, and it focused on the Valentine family, a group of gods living amongst humans in modern-day LA. Aphrodite is the family matriarch who runs a matchmaking company called Valentine Incorporated, which brings soulmates together. The employees of Valentine Incorporated are a bunch of matchmaker gods who have to keep their love god identity a secret for some reason. But their god methods just don't work in modern times, which means trouble for these gods.
Entire relationships are conducted through text messaging. Mortals are constantly creating substitutions for human interaction.
You see, if mortals don't start to love properly, then the gods start to become mortal.
Do you know what happens to gods who become irrelevant?
Hey.
Whoa. They become mortal.
That's right. The eternal gods of Olympus are becoming mortal because of Snapchat. Man, remember when women were considered malformed versions of men and were basically property? We should go back to that. That was when love was real. As Greek god TV doesn't seem to sell well, looking at you, Hercules the animated series, this was canceled after 8 episodes. So that's it for our look at Aphrodite, a character who fluctuates with our attitudes on sexy women throughout the decades, as well as who is creating that image, be it Disney or Terry Gilliam or... Yeah, so next episode, we are tossing it up with the theme not being a person, but a thing, namely a thing that happened. So here are your options. You can vote for it here and in the link below this video. Should be interesting. Thank you for watching and see you next time.